Hello, friends. Welcome to our Southern Community, your public affairs program exploring the people and the issues of the environment, energy, and economics across the region. Today's program is a interesting and I hope inspiring program. We are visiting in the Little River Valley in Transylvania County with a few volunteers with the People for Clean Mountains. There is a proposal in the county of Transylvania to install what amounts to a garbage burning incinerator that would produce electricity. Our program today really begins with the remarkable development of the People for Clean Mountains organization and their campaign that has come to fruition in 30 days, perhaps 34 days by the time this is broadcast. We have with us Rick Faulkner, a volunteer with People for Clean Mountains. Rick, welcome to the program.
Hi, Ned. Thanks for having us here today. We appreciate the opportunity to talk about People for Clean Mountains.
And next as our guest today is Nick Friedman, the owner, operator, and chief potter at Duck Pond Pottery, a business in Transylvania County. Nick, welcome to the program.
Thanks a lot, Ned. Thanks for having us.
And rounding out our triumvirate today is Kevin Glenn, whose home we are graciously welcomed into to record today's program, and we are just about a mile from the proposed incinerator site. Kevin, welcome to the program.
Good morning, Ned. Thank you.
The formation of People for Clean Mountains is now about a month, and in that period of time, the group has become a chapter of the Blue Ridge Environmental Defense League, has opened accounts, has a post office box, over 800 people on a Facebook page, and a website that's getting plenty of attention, and all this and much more in 30 days. What about a quick review, a little background look of how all this began in the very inception merely a month ago?
Well, initially it was just picking up the newspaper, Transylvania Times, and seeing an article about a proposed biomass plant. I read the article. The article seemed entirely positive about this prospect, but it was noticeable that all the quotes were coming from the developers or the other interested parties in the project. And I have a friend of mine that founded the Dogwood Alliance, and I was aware of the fact that they were getting ready to start a campaign against this thing called biomass electricity and how this kind of electricity might negatively impact southern forests. Some red lights went off with me right away reading this. I put a post up on Facebook if anybody else had read the article, what they thought about it, and then got busy on Google doing some research on what this biomass electricity is all about. The red lights kept popping. And so we basically started a group on Facebook shortly after that to start a process of due diligence. It wasn't so much opposition initially as it was, how come we're just finding out about this now? And why is it that the people that are our leaders in this don't seem to be aware of all these problems? So that's how it all started.
The article that Nick mentioned that was in the Transylvania Times was on March 25th. I read that article as well, and the project sounded quite plausible. After thinking about it for a short period of time, an hour or two, I decided to look into what biomass was. I really had no idea. And what struck me most in my research was the lack of information on this particular process that these developers were proposing for our community. And the more research I did, the more nebulous the article in the paper became to me. The first question that came to me was the proposed feedstock for this facility, what they were calling MSW, municipal solid waste. In layman's terms, our trash.
By feedstock, Kevin, you mean the material that's going to be burned in the system to create the electricity the way the proposal runs?
Yes, the raw material that they were proposing to use to fire this facility. And I had seen the post that Nick had made on Facebook, and there were other people chiming in. I felt, along with many others, that it was necessary to group together for an information exchange. And that is when others began the Facebook page, the Transylvania County Biomass Info Exchange, as a place for gathering and disseminating information about this proposal. And it has just grown beyond our wildest dreams. From its inception on approximately March 29th, hundreds of posts and the hundreds of documents and questions that have been uploaded and commented on has been mind-boggling. And in addition to the Facebook page that we started on the Biomass Exchange, we came up with an idea for a website, peopleforcleanmountains.org. In the course of our research, we have put together over 300 documents related to this technology and similar technologies. We are in the process now of finalizing the uploads to the web page. I believe we're at about 150 documents on the web page as we speak today. Hopefully shortly the rest of the documents will be up there for everyone to peruse, to make a decision on whether we support or are in opposition to this proposal.
My first awareness of this project was when I read about it in the Transylvania Times. Myself, like everybody else has said, and a lot of people in the community have said, we had just a lot of questions about what was being proposed. There was a lot of questions about the economic impact and whether this really made sense in terms of the types of jobs we'd be bringing in, whether it would actually even bring in a net positive on jobs. The research that's been done on this has really enabled us to get underneath and answer questions that unfortunately the developers had not been able to answer or would not answer when these questions came up. And I think People for Clean Mountains, from that very first meeting where people came together and began to coalesce as a community around these unanswered questions, has been the driving force to trying to get a clear picture of what, number one, is being proposed, and number two, what the impact might be on the community. And quite honestly, at this point, the impact seems to be overwhelmingly negative. We really are having a hard time finding the positive aspects to what's being proposed by the developers.
Now, Nick, you hosted the first community meeting where folks got together in person as opposed to doing their own independent research. Tell us about that.
I host a lot of events in my pottery shop. We have a deck that's along the French Broad River. We host a concert series there, but usually it's just for fun. There was an urgency underlying this, and so I extended the offer of hosting the event. There was a very broad cross-section of people that lived in the community that showed up. These were people that were multi-generational folks. These were people that were transplants, people from all walks of life. Not so much opposed at this point, at this very early meeting, but very concerned about it, very anxious to get more information. As other people have joined the group, it's almost as if this has grown into a kind of think tank for biomass electricity and why this is not desirable for our community. But we're starting to turn the corner now, and there's starting to be shoots that are growing off this core group looking into the future, thinking of what kind of things do we want to bring into our town in terms of ways we handle our waste, kinds of clean industry we bring into the community, and we can provide a helping hand to those elected and appointed officials.
This has really gotten the community engaged in a healthy discussion about where Transylvania County wants to go, how it should get there. I think People for Clean Mountains has really tried to provide the county commissioners and other elected officials with good, solid information about not only the proposal that's on the table, but also alternatives, ways to develop a solid economic development policy.
I find it interesting that while the organization as it formed really did come to an initial consensus that this is not a good idea to burn garbage in Little River Valley, the dual equal purpose of the organization was development of sound economic policy, procedures, and so on for the county.
That's exactly right. When we looked at this, the business case really just wasn't there in terms of the possible damage this could do to our community. But at the same time, there certainly is a need for economic development in our community. That is universally accepted, that we need to find ways to bring in good jobs, jobs that pay a living wage, jobs that pay benefits, jobs that would allow our youth to stay in the community, to buy homes, to raise their families here. Unfortunately, the biomass facility doesn't do any of that. But People for Clean Mountains hopes that through this dialogue, we can create a economic development process that will bring those kind of jobs and businesses to Transylvania County.
In our research, we realized that we can't just be just a one-trick horse. Offering alternatives to this plant while in opposition is the right thing to do. First, to become more inclusive, to draw in the citizens of the county. We are hoping to reach everyone with this, and not just to be a group that was established to oppose this plant. And I think that's the most important point that I could get across about the goals of People for Clean Mountains, to engage everyone in a positive outcome to the formation of this group, and to pull some positives out of this proposal, whether we in fact go with it or not. We do truly want to work with the county government in getting our information together and making an informed decision. We do not want to be antagonistic in any way. We feel that that is counterproductive to the goals that we have. We are still in the information gathering stage on our end, and also from the developers' end. They have not really told us exactly what they propose for this facility. We just feel that the information coming from the industry has been lacking, and that we do want to work with and help the commissioners in their due diligence. We realize that they don't have the time to do all the research. And what the community has gathered is just an incredible amount of information that we have shared with the county government in the quest for knowledge.
One of the things that has come out of the discussion about the proposed biomass plant has been our waste flows and what to do with our landfill. And directly related to that are the questions of, well, what are other strategies we could be taking to deal with these complicated problems? One of the alternate strategies that we've been looking at are zero waste strategies. I didn't know what a zero waste strategy was 3 weeks ago, but now I'm quickly learning that this is a strategy that's being adopted by both large cities such as San Francisco, small towns similar to Brevard such as Nantucket in Massachusetts, where they have recycling strategies that make zero waste their goal. We want to make sure that that gets put on the table going forward, because those are strategies that don't require toxic emissions, and they don't require giving up our valley floor to something that is going to be polluting. Off of our Transylvania County Biomass Info Exchange page, now there's more of a positive, forward-looking discussion having to do with our recycling.
And that page, Nick, is Recycle Transylvania on Facebook. Am I correct?
That's right.
And to add to what Nick said about the Transylvania County recycling idea, was when the developers presented to the public their proposal on April 11th, their discussion was fueling this facility with garbage. And that only a small part of that garbage would come from Transylvania County. The majority would come from elsewhere.
The stated ratio, at least at that developer's presentation, was 30% of their 220 wet tons a day came from Transylvania County. 70% would be trucked in from nobody knows.
That is what the developers said at their presentation on the percentages of MSW needed to fuel their facility. That thought led us to discuss further the dynamics of hauling in trash to our valley to fuel this. And in that same vein, they would have to bring more material in from elsewhere, which would make us more of a magnet for the region's trash. And it just didn't seem like the way we wanted to deal with this issue.
I think the group quickly realized that the answer to the recycling and garbage issues in our region, not just in Transylvania County, but throughout Western North Carolina, wasn't to truck in to one central place, in this case, Transylvania County, all the region's garbage. It's hopefully to reduce the level of garbage across the region, to increase recycling, to hopefully achieve that zero goal of municipal waste. And at the same time, our county and our county officials have invested a great deal of time and money in our local landfill already. We have a 40-year span for the landfill to continue. Other counties have used their landfill operations to recover methane gas. So since we have this 40-year lifespan, and in fact we have a brand new landfill cell that hasn't even been opened up yet, the real goal here should be to reduce the input to that landfill so that we can extend that lifespan, hopefully indefinitely.
The whole question of recycling materials and landfills and ultimate disposal is a fairly complex one, but there's a across-the-board consensus that if you don't create a problem in the first place for landfills, that's the least expensive and most environmentally responsible way to do it. Just don't create the problem. That said, there have been many very successful and continually today operating landfill gas recovery systems which draw the methane from the landfill, use it to create electricity, and avoid all the emissions issues of incineration, which are releasing toxic emissions because of the materials burned. So landfill gas recovery is not a perfect solution, but so far it's the best technology that avoids the climate issues with methane, provides electricity, and it does so for perhaps 10 to 20 years as the landfill completes its decay process. So if you have to burn the landfill gases, it's better to burn them from the landfill, not haul it somewhere else and burn it again.
We have to remember that all of this has happened in the last 30 days, so our sequence has kind of been all over the board. It's been pretty chaotic. But after that first meeting at Duck Pond, there have been several other meetings attended by anywhere from 30 to 75 people, and each meeting had a different group of people attending, so we were reaching more and more. That led to number one, the presentation by the developers on April 11th, which drew 300 people to it.
Standing room only at the library in Brevard.
Most of us with questions. After the presentation, there was a question and answer period with the developers, and at that time, they were not able to answer any of the questions that were posed to them to what we felt was a satisfactory level. As a result of that presentation, our desire for information was galvanized really throughout the community, leading us to become more involved, or a desire to become more involved with our county government. The presentation that was given to the public is available on our website in its entirety, the presentation and the question and answer period afterwards, so that anybody that wants to see it can draw some conclusions of their own from the presentation. As a result of the presentation and the insufficient information given to us by the developers, we wanted to bring that to the attention of our county commissioners. There was a county commissioners meeting scheduled. We were not on the agenda, and we had no desire to be on the agenda as there are other important county business being done. We decided as a group to gather in town and have a solidarity walk to the county commissioners meeting at the library in Transylvania County. Our goal was not to disrupt. It was a silent march from the courthouse in the center of town, 2 blocks down to the site of the county commissioners meeting at the library. And our goal was just to stand there to let them know that there are citizens in this county that want to be involved, and that we do have a voice, and not a disruptive one, but a helpful voice.
This is Our Southern Community. I'm your host, Ned Ryan Doyle, speaking with Kevin Glenn, Nick Friedman, and Rick Falkner about how a local community organization develops from almost nothing to a force to be discussed in 30 days. We will be back in just a few moments. Our Southern Community is made possible by the support of Sundance Power Systems, dedicated to leading the clean energy transition. Sundance Power Systems has installed hundreds of renewable energy systems since 1995. Empowering people with solar, Sundance Power Systems embodies a deep commitment to sustainability by operating a carbon-neutral office and embracing opportunities to support educational events and initiatives in the community. Visit their website, sundancepower.com, for a wealth of clean energy resources and their clean energy work. We are back again with Kevin Glenn, Nick Friedman, and Rick Falkner talking about the People for Clean Mountains and their efforts at community organizing and community involvement. This whole process of the very rapid development of People for Clean Mountains has been a real story in and of itself in terms of the community actions and the endeavors and efforts that have come out of this. It's really been impressive. One of the things that seems to strike a lot of people as a very common sense move was to ask for a moratorium in the county to actually give the county commissioners time to look at this, to give the citizens a time to dig into it. And that seems like it's really brought the community together in many ways.
Ned, you're absolutely right. And in fact, at the last county commissioners meeting, our county manager, Artie Wilson, pointed out to the commissioners that there were a lot of unanswered questions that he and staff have been trying to get answers to from the developers for a considerable amount of time. At that same meeting, they also expressed surprise that the developers had gone ahead and applied for their permits with the North Carolina Utilities Commission. And I think that raised a good deal of concern on the commissioner's part as well as on the citizens' part about how rapidly this could move ahead without having those questions fully answered. So to that end, I think we've all kind of decided that the commissioners should seriously consider placing a moratorium on this kind of industry coming into Transylvania County until it's completely vetted and we have all the answers to those very serious questions.
And on the subject of the questions that Rick spoke of, as a result of the Transylvania County Biomass Info Exchange page, people were just popping questions right and left to the developers and to the county commissioners. After several hundred of these questions, and we really didn't have good answers for them, we came to the conclusion that we really needed to gather all of these questions in a manner that we could present them to the developers and to the commissioners, community questions, more so than technical and government questions. And as a result of that, we gathered 7 pages worth of questions to present to the commissioners in the hope that they in turn would forward these to the developers and get the answers that we all require before making a decision on this facility. The questions that we were able to gather from the community input, we felt covered a broad range of issues. Some of the questions dealt with technology, some with health issues from the medical community, studies on various plants that are in existence and their impact on their community, questions about alternatives, questions about the economics of this facility, is it a viable project, questions about tax credits, renewable energy credits, how this program was going to be funded, truck traffic issues. It really did cover the scope of what questions we do need answers for. We probably have several hundred questions in those 7 pages. We put these questions together, presented them to the commissioners, and since that time, we've already begun on a round 2 of questions for them that more people have brought up since then, and very valid questions. How are they going to sell their renewable energy credits? How are the tipping fees going to change? And again, back to what Rick had mentioned earlier, what jobs is this truly going to bring to our community?
Because of all these questions, it became evident that everybody, the citizens, the county commission, everyone's just going to need to cool their jets a little bit, and we need some time to come up with some good answers to these questions. Initially, it seemed there was quite a bit of animosity towards or against the county commission because this issue, the proposal of the plant, seemed to be popped on everybody so suddenly. But the tone has really changed now. There's a general consensus forming that the county commission may be one of our greatest lifelines to finding a path out of this threatening situation. And the moratorium is to gain a little time for answering the questions that have come so far, and also to give people a little time to come up with some more questions that they have, because this is a technology that's very controversial, and there's research being done all the time on the negative impacts, both human health impacts and environmental impacts, that these facilities have.
One example of this in terms of the impacts that potentially are negative, just a few days ago before we sat to record, a similar biomass facility in Minnesota literally exploded, and it's looking like it would be several days just to finish putting the fire out. So it's beyond the economics. There are very serious questions about this technology and this approach that any responsible community really needs some answers to.
What we have discovered in our research is that this is an unproven technology. Additionally, the developers that are presenting this have an unproven track record, and we can find nothing in the public record that they have permitted and built a facility of this magnitude. The process that they have presented to us is a pyrolysis gasification of municipal solid waste to produce electricity. There are no commercially permitted plants in the United States doing exactly that right now. Part of the reason we would like time to digest and get answers to these questions is that we're not really sure we want to be the guinea pigs for the industry.
As Kevin said, we've had a very difficult time even finding a similar plant to this that we could go visit. When the developers were in town back on April 11th, we specifically asked them to provide us with the name and location of a plant that we could go see and talk to the neighbors, talk to the community where it was in operation. At that time, they said they would do that. Well, as it turns out, they can't do that because no such facility exists. And the fact that they didn't tell us that at that April 11th meeting is somewhat disturbing.
There's been general agreement, at least on our Facebook page, that we need to move towards a moratorium. And in supporting that effort, we've circulated a petition to get signatures of voters in Transylvania County to support the idea that we establish a period of time, a moratorium, to allow due diligence on the side of the citizens and on the side of the county commissioners. So it's hard to conceive of a situation where somebody would be opposed to that moratorium, whether you're in general favor of this kind of process or not. The idea of just allowing more time to gather information seems to appeal to everybody that we've been having this conversation with.
The idea of the moratorium, I think, as Nick said, is really universally well received. There just are so many unanswered questions. The process that got us here, the economic development process that got us to this situation, has approximately taken about 18 months. During that time, the developers have changed the scope and nature of this proposal a number of different times. So the moratorium that we are asking for is also of the same length, 18 months, so that we can actually go back and do the due diligence that's necessary, get all the answers to the questions that are out there, make sure that the developers have a specific proposal on the table that we all know that they're going for and then we can react to.
Along with this process of asking for the moratorium, one of the slightly more technical aspects of it that the people for Clean Mountains are looking into is the question of the North Carolina Utilities Commission permitting process for a power generating unit. One of the goals that the developers claimed in their presentation was producing 4 megawatts of electricity. So that brings the North Carolina Utility Commission into the picture.
this learning curve for the permitting process of the Utility Commission has been quite enlightening. The community has registered to date 114 comments on the developer's permit applications. These comments have developed into the Utilities Commission stating that they will hold a public hearing on this issue in Transylvania County at a time to be determined. There is a process that the developers have to follow as far as legal notices in the paper, a comment period after the closing of the public notices, and the Utilities Commission gathering of their facts. There's just so many unanswered questions. We are learning on the fly the application process for the utilities, the various permits that are going to be required.
The Utility Commission process for permitting of one of these sites is fairly well delineated, as Kevin just described. The developers, just in the last week, have actually asked the Utilities Commission to sort of change that process because the developers are unable to answer all the questions and provide the Utilities Commission with all the details that the process normally requires. They've asked the Commission to bifurcate their process. As I understand it, that's a somewhat legal term that would allow the developers to move forward with their permitting while they endeavor to try to get answers to the questions that remain out there. That's another reason why we really think the moratorium is of critical importance, that we and the developers all get their acts together. We have this moratorium to make sure that all due diligence is completed.
With all the challenges of the referendums, moratoriums, petitions, and the legal approaches, at the same time, the people for Clean Mountains seem to be having a relatively good time of it. Nick, you had a pretty good meeting over at Duck Pond. There have been a number of events. There's some upcoming music fundraisers set in place. The bumper stickers that have been created to ask questions about the process with a white squirrel, the trademark of Brevard and Transylvania County, are on them. So it's more than just legalese.
Right. What we're seeing is this organization is gaining support. People are really galvanizing now. I was in the bakery last week, and just hearing the conversation floating around in a public space like the bakery, hearing people talk about things like waste flows and toxic emissions, and then you hear people talking about what do we really want as a town, and things are just kind of buzzing in Transylvania County right now. It's gotten to the point on our Facebook page we actually had to branch off just to keep the focus on the one page about biomass electricity, but then other things are being discussed now too, such as what kind of industries we want to have in this town. You know, a lot of that has to do with thinking about not only what industries we want to cultivate and bring into town, but what kind of skills might people learn to be more self-sufficient in the future and more resilient against this kind of thing coming into the county. Just to give you an example, I have personal affiliation towards natural building, and that's totally relevant in this situation because houses that are built with clay, sand, and straw don't have any impact at all on the landfill. There's other kinds of examples that abound. Maybe we should save that for another show. But I think that in terms of silver linings, this issue is chock full of silver linings.
Another outcome of this discussion has been the realization that we are not in this alone. There are community groups, national and worldwide, questioning this industry. One of the beauties of our research is that these other organizations have been more than willing to share info and data that they have. And along the lines of what People for Clean Mountains is for, is our information gathering is not only for us, but it is for other communities that are having the same issues that we are. This is not just a county issue. This is a national issue, and that we need the resources and that we welcome the resources from others that are in the same position, and we are more than willing to share that.
It's really been very instructive, some of the comments on the Facebook page, reflecting what you just said, Kevin. There's a real sense that this is not a NIMBY not in my backyard issue of something that has to be done. There's a much larger question of why even do it in the first place. Someone encapsulated it, I thought, very well. They said it's not NIMBY, it's NOPE, not on planet Earth. So it really is a larger issue.
I just wanted to also thank everybody in the community that has stepped forward with their talent, their leadership, their support for this effort. As Nick said, it really has galvanized the community. It's brought a lot of people together that I don't think normally would sit together and talk together. So there are a number of good things that are coming out of this, and the support across the county and even from surrounding counties has been really great.
Another point that needs to be brought out is that even though this started as a social media phenomena, in the short time that we've been at this, we're trying to figure out ways to reach out to the community that is not involved with social media. And one of those ways is that we are looking into having town hall meetings at the various community centers in the county to reach those local residents.
There have been ads run in the Transylvania Times as well, which have been, it seems, very effective and well received to at least raise the questions once again and let the folks in the county understand something's happening.
Getting the word out and informing our fellow Transylvanians does cost a little money. You know, we're up against people that have plenty of money. We're just trying to raise some money for our bumper stickers, our ads in the newspaper, some signs. If you feel like you might want to make a donation and help inform the people of Transylvania, please visit our website at www.peopleforcleanmountains.org.
That website really does have a wealth of information about what's going on. We also have a P.O. Box. It's P.O. Box 1624, Pisgah Forest, North Carolina, 28768. And of course, please visit the Facebook page for Transylvania County Biomass Info Exchange. There's always very interesting dialogues going on that page.
Ned, thank you very much for allowing this opportunity to help raise awareness of this issue in our county.
Kevin, thanks a lot for taking the time, and good luck in your research work with People for Clean Mountains.
Thank you.
Nick Friedman, owner of Duck Pond Pottery, thank you for taking the time, because I know this is a really busy season for you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Ned. I'd say as far as economic impacts, the only negative economic impact I see of this Facebook page is everybody's on it all the time and nobody's getting any work done.
It's a busy exchange. Nick, thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, Ned.
Rick Falconer, thank you as well for the time and the effort into it. It's been quite an adventure for just the last 30 days or so.
Ned, thanks for your time today, and I appreciate the opportunity to really spread the word throughout the county. And again, anybody that's interested, please visit that website, peopleforcleanmountains.org.
Today's program is the second in an unfolding series following the proposal in Transylvania County for burning garbage or municipal solid waste to produce electricity. In addition to being a serious question for the county, the region, and the nation overall, it's newsworthy the remarkable progress that one community has made in such an incredibly short period of time to come together, address the questions, look for the answers, and work together as a community on so many levels. Our Southern Community will bring you updates as they develop in this very important story, and keep you up to date on the activities of the People for Clean Mountains, a chapter of the Blue Ridge Environmental Defense League. Thank you for joining us in today's program of Our Southern Community. Archived programs are available at oursouthern.community.org, and your comments and requests and suggestions are warmly welcomed at info@oursouthern.community.org. This is your host, Ned Ryan Doyle. Have a great week.